Waiting. I lie out in the prison yard every afternoon leading up to the trial. It's the only perk of isolation, I guess, that I'm alone in my tiny, fenced-off strip of land, far away from the rest of the inmates. I don't have to watch my back for fights, or gossip. I can just sprawl flat on my back in the yellowed grass, watching the sky. If I tilt my head just right, I don't see the barbed wire fencing or the top of the guard's tower, just the expanse of blue sky overhead. Every 10 minutes or so, a plane takes off, banking in a wide semicircle across the island before heading out, to America, or Europe, or some other place that's anywhere but here. You'd think the ache would lessen watching them go. I must have seen hundreds of planes leave by now, day after day, but every time, I feel it fresh, the same sharp longing in my chest, to be on one of those flights, squeezed up against some noisy seatmate in the tiny row, spilling peanuts and watching bad movies on an 8-inch screen. Going home. A wolf whistle cuts through my reverie, sharp. I sit up, turning to find somebody leaning up against the barbed wire fence. I squint, confused, until the figure shifts out of the sun, and I make out his familiar blonde hair and ice blue eyes. Nicholas. I freeze. How did you get in? I finally scramble to my feet, slowly approaching him. He's on the guard's side of the wire, lounging and smug in loose surfer shorts and one of his preppy pastel polo shirts, the collar popped. I study him suspiciously, staying back from the wire. You're not allowed. Visiting hours finished this morning. I pulled some strings. Nicholas's eyes trail up and down my body, with its baggy prison jumpsuit now dusty from the dirt. Why? I fold my arms across my chest, remembering sharply how unnerved I felt around him, like he was imagining me naked. Of all the guys in the bar that first night, Elise had to pick the creepiest of them all. I saw you on TV. He smirks, casual with his hands in his pockets. Nice show. I liked the part where you cried, very touching. His tone is amused, almost mocking. I shiver. What do you want? Can't I pay a visit, show some moral support? Nicholas asks. It must be tough for you here, all alone. Your friends all went back home, didn't they? Guess they didn't want to stick around for a killer. I didn't do it, I say quietly, before I can stop myself. Nicholas tilts his head at me. Maybe not. He smirks again. But that won't make a difference, will it? I take a step back as he chuckles to himself. Found yourself a prison bitch yet? Some action in the showers? He waggles his eyebrows suggestively. I always wondered, you and Elise. I suggested you come join us, but she said that wasn't her style. That she didn't like sharing you. I glare at him. Stop it. Funny, isn't it? Nicholas looks around. You were the one saying I'd never make anything of my life, never be anyone, and here you are. The smile slips, and his eyes turn hard as glass. You girls thought you were so much better than me, didn't you? Laughing at me, making me look a fool. Well, look where you are now. He gestures around at the bars and wire. And Elise. What? I demand. What about her? Nicholas stares back at me, hard and unflinching. Maybe the bitch got what she deserved. Vacation. I down a shot of tequila, then another, the burn shooting down my throat like fire. Look at you go. Elise whistles. My girl's going wild. I ignore her and grab another shot, this one lurid blue and peppermint sweet in my mouth. We're back in the bar from the first night on the island, the music's still loud, the floor's still sticky, the crowd still packed half naked and sweaty in the shack of a room. I can't believe it was only 3 days ago we partied here, happy and blissfully naive. I drain the glass, wincing at the taste. What's the deal? Elise slips her arm around my waist and pulls me in close. Not that I'm not a fan of this new party girl but I thought you said you were taking it easy this week. Things change. I duck out of her embrace and cross the bar, to where Lamar's waiting against the wall, watching Chelsea and Mel dance and spin around the room. Come on, I take his hand, pulling him toward the dance floor. Tate won't dance. I'm all alone. The girls are out there. Yes, but I need a big, strong guy to protect me, I tease. It's no fun without you. Just one song. Lamar laughs and lets me lead him into the crowd. It's a fast song, with a grinding dance bass. I feel the alcohol seep through me, the giddy lift, the sweet veil slipping over my mood. This is what I need, an escape from the doubts creeping into my mind and all the questions as heavy as the flaking pendant against Elise's neck. I let the music take over, swaying close to Lamar. My arms are loose around his neck, my body against his. He's more built than Tate, muscles from the football field, taut under my fingertips as I run them across his shoulders. He backs away slightly. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? I spin out, and then back to his body again, close enough to feel the heat beneath his loose t-shirt. He's still frowning, but his body moves against mine with the beat of the music, slowly relaxing. He's always liked me. It's nothing he's ever said or done, but I can tell all the same. Like the way he'll look at me sometimes, when I'm tucked in Tate's embrace, or when we're all dressed up for a night out, heels and skirts and hair falling down low, and I'll feel his eyes on me, edged with something more than friendship. I never thought of doing anything about it, of course, it was just nice to know. Validation, I guess. And there's Chelsea, and Tate, always Tate, filling my mind until there's no room for anything else. But now, through the gentle haze of tequila and dark, pulsating lights, I wonder what it would be like if I'd picked Lamar instead. Easy, and sweet. Fun. Not this all-consuming hunger I have for Tate, the dagger shards of insecurity slicing through me. He would be a satellite, not my gravity, the pull so strong it scares me sometimes. I move closer, sliding my hands down his back. He sways for a moment, leaning in, and there's a longer moment when we're in sync, closer than we should be, then Lamar detaches himself from me awkwardly. I should get back to Chels. There's a hand on my shoulder, and Lamar's eyes go past me. Hey, man, he says quickly. We were just going to find you. She's all yours. He swiftly hands me off to Tate, then slips away through the crowd. I slide against Tate, still moving, not pausing for a second. He places his hands loosely on my waist and gives me a crooked grin.
Should I be worried?
He teases. Maybe. I smile back, still feeling off balance. Maybe I'm having a torrid affair with Lamar behind your back. You ever think about that? Tate laughs, pulling me closer. No way, he says, stroking my hair possessively. He wouldn't dare. You're my girl. I fall into his arms, until he's half holding me up and we're barely moving on the dance floor, just standing there together. It's weird and maybe wrong, but ever since Halloween, my costume pooling on the floor, an unfamiliar lust in his eyes, I've felt that way too, like I belong to him. Branded by his kisses, his touch, all those nights grasping precious time and each other under the soft down covers in his room after dark. I'm as much his as Elise's now, but the one thought that never slipped in, never even drifted across my mind, was that they could belong to each other. Without me. I need to sit down, I say, suddenly dizzy. I push him away, breaking for the edge of the dance floor. I grab onto the back of a booth, my head spinning. This is crazy, I tell myself, struggling to breathe. I don't know anything, I shouldn't even be thinking. ... What's up, baby doll? Elise collapses beside me. I blink. I ... I stare at her, the smudge of black glitter liner on her lids, the gentle pink swell of her lips. I don't ... Her forehead creases into a frown. Hey, you don't look so good. Come on. She takes my hand. I don't move. Anna? Come on, you just need some fresh air, then you'll feel better. Elise smiles, reassuring me, it was the 5th shot, wasn't it? What am I always telling you? You've got to pace yourself. I nod, and follow her out toward the exit.
She grabs a bottle of water from the bar as we pass, and then the night air is cool against my face.
I pause, disoriented, as the blast of music and voices recedes behind the closed doors, replaced with the hum from other bars on the main street, traffic and passers-by, and the distant crashing of the ocean. Easy there, Elise murmurs, steering me carefully across the concrete walkway and onto the sand. Give me some warning if you're going to barf, okay? She bends, undoing the straps of my wedge sandals in turn and gently lifting my feet out of them as I lean on her for balance. She straightens. Rule 1, suede and vomit don't mix. She grins at me, and I blink back, still dazed. In the dark out here, her eyes are almost violet, large and luminous. Elise rolls them good-naturedly. Man, you really went hard tonight. She kicks off her own shoes and then scoops both pairs in one hand, taking my arm in the other. You good to walk? I nod again, and we slowly strike out across the sand, heading toward the dark stretch of ocean. Nick texted me again, Elise chatters, swinging our sandals back and forth. I swear, it's like the 10th time tonight. Wanting to know where we'll be, what time I'll get there. ... It's kind of tacky, I mean, he seemed kind of cool to begin with, that whole, Lord and Master of all he surveys thing, but I don't know, he kind of gives me the creeps now. She pauses. You know he did this weird role-play thing, when we were hooking up? He got off on the whole domination thing, you know, holding me down, trying to make me beg. I mean, I like getting thrown around as much as the next girl, but this was different. I don't know. We come to a stop just on the shoreline, where the soft, cool sand turns damp from the slow sweep of the waves. Elise crumples to the ground, her legs folded beneath her. I sit, hugging my knees to my chest. Feeling better? She asks, concerned. Here. She unscrews the cap and passes the water bottle to me. I take a sip. It's warm but clear in the back of my throat. So. Elise pauses. She sifts sand through her fingertips. You going to tell me what's wrong? What? I flinch. Nothing's wrong. Elise fixes me with an even gaze. Come on, Anna. You can't pull this with me. Something's been up with you all day. You barely said a word on the beach, and then you took that nap all afternoon. I had a headache. I protest weakly. And now you're drinking like you want to pass out, Elise finishes. I know you, remember? Better than anyone. This isn't you. I don't speak for a minute, watching the dark shadows of the waves. The words are there, jumbled up in my mind, but I can't bring myself to say them out loud. To accuse her, based on what? A bad feeling in the base of my spine, a mixed-up necklace, a shiver? It's crazy. They wouldn't do this to me. She wouldn't do this. I guess I'm just stressed, I say at last, looking down. I trace circles in the sand, pushing the grains into spiraling shapes. College, and school ending. What happens after, you know? That's ages away. It's not. I shake my head. Graduation's in a couple of months, then we all go off in different directions. This could be the last time we're all together like this. Elise reaches out and squeezes my hand. It's okay. Some things aren't meant to last. My eyes must have widened in horror because she laughs and says, not us. We're set, remember? You and me, doddering around an old estate somewhere in our 90s. Gray gardens-ing it up. Turbans and paste jewelry, I agree quietly. She grins, with 15 cats. And a hot pool boy. I laugh. It feels like a release somehow. Relief. And I realize the worst part of my stupid suspicions wasn't even Tate, and his terrible betrayal, but the idea of losing Elise. Of her being gone from my life, cut away and buried for good. Elise squeezes my hand again. It'll be okay, I promise, she tells me. It's you and me. I don't know about the others, maybe Mel, and Lamar, and AK and everyone come back every holiday, and we hang out and visit each other, and nothing changes. Or maybe we drift apart and don't speak until our 10-year reunion. Shit happens, you know? You can't control it. But us? We're forever. I lace my fingers through hers in response. I know it's stupid, I say, feeling as foolish for the things I haven't said as the things I did. It's high school. We always couldn't wait for it to be done. But now, everything's so close. I like how it is, right now. I don't want anything to change. But it does, Elise says softly. Everything changes. But it can be better. Think about it, if we both get into USC. You and me, California. We can hang out on the beach like this all the time, and not die of hypothermia. I smile, leaning to rest my head on her shoulder. I never told her I've spent these last weeks split, wavering between schools on the east and west coasts, between proximity to her or to Tate. Now I'm glad I didn't make a big deal of it, because it doesn't feel like a choice anymore. Of course I'm going with her. Of course. Do you love me? I ask, repeating our familiar refrain. You know I do. How much? Miles and miles. We sit on the beach until the world slowly stops spinning on its axis, then head back across the sand to the bar. I'm almost not surprised to find Melanie waiting outside the back exit, pacing back and forth and clutching her phone. She sees us approach, and rushes up to meet us. "Where were you guys?" she demands. "I've been texting and calling." "Why didn't you tell me you were going somewhere?" she adds, a whining note to her voice. "I thought something happened." "Jesus, we were gone 10 minutes, Elise says, and sighs. "Do you want me to wear a tracking chip?" Mel blinks. "I was worried, that's all." "So don't be." Elise pushes past her to head back inside the bar. The blast of music swallows her up, and I make to follow, but Mel moves to block my path. "Why do you have to keep doing this?" she glares at me fiercely. I step back. "What?" Dragging her off somewhere, always coming between us. Mel's eyes are wide and almost tearful in the dim light, and her words pour out in a furious torrent. "I know you hate me, but she's my friend too, and you won't let her spend any time with me at all." "Let her?" I repeat slowly, caught there in the doorway. I don't have space for Mel's desperate insecurities, not after days of her sighing and whining and moaning, tagging along in the background for everything. For fuck's sake, since when does Elise do anything she doesn't want to do? I demand, if she's not hanging out with you anymore, that's her choice. It's got nothing to do with me. Mel's mouth drops open. "She would never, ... she manages, as she starts to cry. "We were friends first. Until you stole her from me. Everything was great until you came along. What are we, stuck in grade school?" I cut her off, my anger blazing now, at her or myself, I'm not sure. I just know that Mel is pouring all her fear and insecurity out onto the dark asphalt in front of me, when I've fought so hard to keep mine hidden. This could be me, I realize in a terrible flash. This could be my future. Without Elise, abandoned and alone. Grow up. It's not finders keepers, okay? I tell her, my voice ringing out, harsh. Maybe if you were less of a whiny, needy brat, she'd still want you around. Mel recoils, as if I'd hit her. "You're such a bitch," she cries. Hey, those are Elise's words, not mine. "You think she's your bestie?" I add. "You should hear what she says when you're not around." Mel's such a baby, I mimic, she's, like, obsessed with me. Quote. "Stop it." Mel yells, her mascara running in 2 pathetic streams down her cheeks. But I can't, not with the anger flooding hot in my veins. "She makes fun of you, how clingy you are," I continue, relentless. "She doesn't get why you don't just take the hint and leave us alone for good." "You're lying." Mel sobs. "I'm not." "She didn't even want you coming on vacation," I tell her. "I was the one who said to invite you. I figured we could put up with you for another few months, until graduation, but God, look at you, you don't know when to give it a break." Mel gives another sob, then whirls around and flees. I watch her hurry down the street, unsteady in high heels, and feel a sobering wash of shame. I shouldn't have done that, I know it right away. I shouldn't have been so cruel, but she just kept pushing me, acting like this was all my fault. And her naked desperation. I shiver, turning back to enter the bar. It's dark and loud inside, and I fight my way through the crowd, looking for the familiar faces of our group.
Elise is up by the bar, a flash of red and blonde, and I duck past a group of drunken frat boy guys, yelling along with the music.
Her back is turned when I reach her. I told you, it was just a one-time thing, she's saying. She shifts, and I see the guy beside her, Nicholas. Everything good? I ask, positioning myself between them. Just peachy, Elise says, and nods, but I see the relief in her smile. The lovely Anna, Nicholas drawls. He grabs my hand, kissing it before I can pull away. Let me buy you ladies a drink. I'm good, thanks, I reply, but Elise beams. A margarita for me. As Nicholas turns to order from the dreadlocked bartender, I lean in closer to Elise. I thought he creeped you out, I murmur. She laughs back. Doesn't mean I can't take his drinks. What did Mel want, anyway? Don't tell me she was calling in a missing persons because we were gone 5 minutes. I sigh. She freaked out, it was a whole thing. I'll tell you later. I glance around. You seen Tate anywhere?
Yeah, I think he was fucking some tourist up against the bathroom wall.
Elise. What? She grins. I'm just messing with you. I'm sure he's sitting quietly in a corner, gazing at photos of you. I shove her lightly. Don't say shit like that, okay? Why? Worried Prince Charming's going to run around on you? Elise's tone is light, but I swear I see something flicker in her expression. Or maybe that's just the 5 shots still spinning in my system, and the crash of the electronic dance beats. I shake my doubts away. No, of course not. I trust him, I reply forcefully, but I can't help adding, he knows it would break my heart. Elise doesn't flinch, just pulls me into a hug. And then I would have to break his skull. She laughs. I rest my cheek against her hair for a moment, calmed. Behind her back, Nicholas is claiming a margarita from the bartender, a vast, frothy concoction with fruit and a tiny umbrella balanced on the lip of the glass. I smile to myself for a moment, for all her bad girl posturing, Elise will always choose the fruity, girly drink over a straight whiskey shooter, and then I catch a glimpse of something, out of the corner of my tired eyes. Nicholas's hand, passing over the drink. A flash of reflection, as if from glass, or a vial. And then it's gone, back in his pocket again, and he's turning to hand Elise the drink with a bland smile. Ready to get this party started for real? He asks. Elise takes the glass and raises it to her lips. The trial. So you saw the victim at the bar, the night before she was killed, isn't that right, Mr. Van Oten? Before the group left, around 2 a.m. Yes. What was the nature of your interaction? I don't understand. What did you do? Gates clarifies, pacing in front of the witness stand. You fought, did you not? No. Nicholas slouches back, his arms folded. He looks utterly at ease, as if he's relaxing in front of the TV, not in the middle of a tense and crowded courtroom. No?
Gates repeats.
But we have statements from several people at the club. They all say you fought with Miss Warren. In fact, she threw a drink over you. Nicholas smirks. It was nothing. A lover's quarrel. He looks for me across the courtroom, and meets my eyes with that same smug, chilling smile I saw through the barbed wire of the prison fence. I shiver. The trial is winding down now. Decker's prosecution case went on for weeks, but now that it's the defense's turn, the list of people appearing on my behalf is painfully short. Gates has done what he could, attacking the flaws in Decker's case any way he can. He sent a parade of forensics experts up on the stand, arguing everything from how the time of death was wide open to how the crime scene was contaminated and the blood spatter suggests someone taller and larger dealt the fatal wounds. But our strongest hope has always been Nicholas. With Juan still vanished into thin air, Nick was the only suspect we can put up there on the stand, to show how he makes more sense as the killer, how he had motive, and opportunity, and practice climbing up to Elise's balcony. All through the trial, I've been holding on to this brief shard of hope, that once they see him, sneering and slouching, cavalier in the face of Elise's brutal death, the judge would have no option but to think twice about my guilt. I sit forward in my seat, willing Nicholas's mask to slip, for some incriminating words to slip out. So, the night before the victim's murder, you fought. Wait, I'm sorry, you quarreled with her. Gates layers on the sarcasm. Why? Nicholas shrugs, nonchalant. She was jealous of my attention. You know how girls are. He flashes a conspiratorial look at the judge. She glares back, unmoved. She wasn't angry because you attempted to spike her drink with liquid ecstasy? Gates demands. Nicholas snaps his head back around. What? No. His face darkens. Who said that? Again, we have statements from several witnesses at the club. Objection. Decker rises. The witnesses say Miss Chevalier accused Mr. Van Oten of spiking the drink. We have no evidence that any drugs were actually withdrawn. Gates sighs. I knew this would happen, but I still dig my nails into my palm with frustration. They warned me that without chemical tests and drink samples, it was my word against his that Nicholas even spiked the drink at all. As if reading my mind, Nicholas gives me another look, this one dark and full of loathing. So, Mr. Van Oten, Gates continues, you didn't attempt to drug the victim that night? No. Nicholas keeps his gaze fixed on me, furious. Have you ever taken liquid ecstasy? Gates presses. No. Never? Interesting. But did you know that it's a drug most commonly used by date rapists? Objection. Decker flies to his feet. The judge nods. Sustained. Gates walks back to our table and leaves through some papers, regrouping. He's lying, I whisper frantically, but Gates just shakes his head at me and gestures to me to keep quiet. The victim rejected your advances that night, isn't that true? Gates returns to the stand. She insulted you, publicly, made a laughingstock of you, in fact? Nicholas shrugs again. It was nothing. You weren't hurt, or angry at all. Gates asks. A pretty girl, making fun of you, in front of your friends. ... Quote. I didn't care what she thought. Nicholas is relaxed again, his mask back in place. Why not? Would you care what a dog thought? A roach? Nicholas smirks. She was just some American slut.
There's an audible intake of breath in the courtroom, and even the judge's mouth drops open a little. I can picture Judy and Charles behind me, listening to this, but as much as my heart breaks for them, I feel hope rise again in my chest.
This is what we need. You didn't value her opinion, Gates muses. What about her consent? Objection. Decker leaps up again before Nicholas can reply. There is no evidence that Mr. Van Outen made any attempt to rape the victim. In fact, we've heard testimony that their encounters were entirely consensual. Gates steps up too. Miss Chevalier has testified that the victim was increasingly uncomfortable with Mr. Van Outen's sexual fetishes. Yes, well, she would say that. Decker interrupts with a snort. I urge Your Honor, please stop the defense's smearing Mr. Van Outen's good name. These are not allegations to be taken lightly. Yes, yes. Judge Von Koppel stops him, then pauses for a long moment. I wait, clutching the table in front of me, silently urging her to let Gates keep going. All the things Elise said about Nicholas being weird in bed, dominating, wanting to make her beg, it would fit with the murder. We just have to push him far enough. After thinking, Judge Von Koppel sighs. I'm afraid I have to agree with the prosecution on this. It's hearsay. We have nothing except the defendant's testimony regarding Miss Warren's feelings. Please move on. My heart falls. Stop. I want to cry out. He needs to answer this. You have to see. But Gates just checks his notes again, figuring out another move. Where were you, the afternoon of the murder? Gates asks, but I already know it's over. We'll get nothing from him, not when he's lying like this. At home, Nicholas drawls. With my father. The whole afternoon? Yes. What were you doing? Nicholas shrugs. I don't remember. But you remember that you were home? The whole afternoon? Sure. Is there anything that can verify your story? Gates presses. Security records, perhaps. You live on a large estate, I assume there are security cameras and alarms posted. Nicholas lifts his body forward toward the mic as if it's a great effort. The system was down. Down? Gates repeats. For how long? Nicholas shrugs. I don't know. So you have no way of proving. Objection. Decker rolls his eyes this time. The witness has accounted for his whereabouts the afternoon in question. We have statements from him and his father.
The judge surveys Gates over her glasses.
I agree, we should move on. Do you have anything else to ask? Gates pauses for a moment, but there's no delaying the inevitable. No. No further questions. The judge bangs her gavel, calling a short recess. Disappointment crashes through me. After everything, I thought Nicholas was the key, that once he was up there on the stand, it would all come out. The drugs, the balcony, the fight. Surely they would have to see how crazy he is.
How dangerous.
I was naive to believe it would make a difference at all. The crowded courtroom disperses briefly in a wave of chatter and conversation. Gates takes a seat beside me at the table, staring blankly at his notes. That's it?
I exclaim, fighting to keep my voice low.
Their security cameras conveniently go down the afternoon she's murdered, and he's still not a suspect? He could have done it. My voice breaks with frustration. His father gave him an alibi.
Gates shrugs, helpless.
He could be lying to protect him. Even if that's true, there's nothing we can do. Nicholas's father is a respected man. He has interests in shipping, and hotels, and owns half the island. I finish, sitting down with a thump. I know. I look around, watching Nicholas saunter from the witness stand. He flutters me a wave as he passes, and then heads on back to meet his father, a large blond man in a designer suit, flanked by other lawyers. They smile and nod, clearly pleased with Nicholas's testimony. His lies. This is how it works, isn't it? I murmur softly, seeing it all play out so clearly now. For weeks, I've had my faith in justice chipped steadily away with every one of Decker's half-truths and sneering implications, but now, the last fragile pieces crumble into nothing. This is a sham, all of it. Nicholas and Tate, they've got money, they can buy their way out of anything. I realize. Say what they like, just to protect themselves. And here I am, ... quote. I trail off, thinking of my one lawyer compared to their dozens, Dad's company, sinking under the weight of my fees and expenses, the extra mortgage on the house, and all the fresh worry lines on my dad's face. It's no contest, is it? Gates doesn't reply, he just takes off his spectacles and polishes them on his tie, exhaling slowly. That's when I know, it's over. I swallow back a sudden rush of tears. It's not his fault. He's done what he can, but sometimes, David doesn't beat Goliath, not when they've got an army at their disposal. A noise comes from the back of the courtroom. We turn. It's Lee, pushing through the crowd, flustered but determined. His shirt is rumpled, and he looks as if he hasn't slept in a week. He hasn't been in court the last few days, but I figured it was just too much for him, the memories of his sister's trial. I've got it. He announces, arriving at our table. Got what? I ask, confused, but Lee doesn't answer me. He's passing a slim memory drive case to Gates, carefully, like a treasure. It's all there, just like Carlson said. Lee catches his breath, running one hand through his hair. Just play the files. The first one's the official cut, then the full clip. Gates grasps the memory drive, and slaps Lee on the back. You did it, he smiles, as if he can't believe it. Lee gives nod. Time to nail the bastard. Someone tell me what's going on? I ask again. My heart is already beating faster, their energy infectious, even though I still have no idea what's caused this change. Is there new evidence? What's happened? Lee turns, giving me a happy grin, just as the judge returns to the room and people begin taking their seats again. Something good, he promises as Von Koppel bangs her gavel for quiet. It's the break we've been looking for. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I stay forward in my seat, on edge, waiting for their reveal. After Nicholas's testimony turned out to be a joke, we need something now, anything to turn this trial around. The judge looks up from her notes, over to Gates. Any further witnesses? She asks. Yes, Your Honor. For my last witness, I'd like to call Klaus Decker back to the stand. Decker looks surprised, but he makes an expression as if to say, sure, why not? He saunters up to the witness chair and settles in, looking amused. Gates loads up the memory stick, bringing up the video on the screen overhead. You've been in charge of the investigation from the beginning, is that true? Yes, Decker replies bluntly. And all evidence, all materials relating to the case, they run through you? Everything. Decker nods. We have a chain of command, and I'm at the top. So you decided what leads to pursue, and, in fact, what evidence to present here in court today? I have presented all evidence relevant to the case, yes. Decker frowns, like he's trying to figure out what Gates is leading toward. He's not the only one. I wait, breathing softly, praying that this big break is something real and substantial, and won't just fade away like Nicholas or Juan or all the other arguments we've made these last weeks. Can you tell me what this is? Gates asks. He hits the controller, and a familiar video begins to play, up on the screen. I exhale, disappointed. We've already seen this, the security footage from the grocery store down the street from the house. There's date and timestamp in the corner showing the afternoon of the murder, and Elise is clear in view, idly browsing the snack aisle. Lee leans forward from the seat behind me and puts his hand on my shoulder. Just wait, he whispers with another grin. Gate hits pause on the video, still waiting for an answer. Decker answers cautiously. It's the tape from the store, the last time the victim was seen alive. You already showed us this footage, I know. Gates smiles. All his previous weary defeat has disappeared, now he's the shark, circling for the kill. In fact, you used it to establish the time of death, and prove that Tate Dempsey couldn't have been the one who killed her. Yes, that's right. Decker is looking worried now. His eyes dart to the back of the courtroom, like he's seeking someone out. The time of death gives him an alibi, but not her. And by her, you mean the defendant. Yes, of course, Decker snaps. He's riled, I realize, watching carefully. He knows what this is about, what's coming. Lee's grip on my shoulder tightens in matching anticipation. Where did you get this tape? From a source, Decker replies. An outside investigator hired by the Dempsey family. But this isn't the full tape, is it? There's a beat. Silence. Decker opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. The judge leans over. Detective? I'm not sure what you mean. Decker's sweating, his forehead shiny and red. He looks guilty, although of what crime, we don't know yet. The courtroom is totally still, all of us waiting for the next words. Then let me show you. Gates beams. This is the video you submitted as evidence. He starts the video again and the frames run through on the screen, grainy and black and white. Elise enters the store, browses the aisles. She grabs a bag of chips and a soda, pays, and leaves. The video cuts. But that wasn't the only footage given to you, was it? Gates says loudly. Decker is silent. There was footage from a second camera, outside the store. This is news to me, and everyone else. Fevered whispers fill the courtroom. Gates hits play and another video starts, this one angled from the doorway, with a view out into the busy street. We see Elise stroll toward the store and enter, but there's another figure in the frame, several steps behind. Juan. I inhale in a rush. Even in the grainy recording, it's him, dreadlocks and a loose linen shirt. He follows Elise down the street, then drops back as she enters the store. He stops, waiting on the other side of the road. Gates pauses on him lurking there, watching the grocery store. Is this the man known to you as Juan? He asks. Yes, Decker replies quietly. The man named as a suspect by the defense, whom the defendant says argued with the victim and followed them back on their first day. Decker is silent, but then offers a grudging yes. And in this footage, does he appear to be following the victim, again? Stalking her? Decker doesn't say a word. Let's take a look for ourselves. Gates hits play again. The video continues, Juan loiters opposite the grocery store. Elise emerges, just a blonde head in the frame. As she exits to the right of the camera shot, Juan crosses the street, moving closer toward us, and Elise. Gates freezes the video just before he disappears from the frame, the large figure heading determinedly after Elise. There's a long silence. I can't believe it, that the video existed, all this time. Decker saw this and tried to bury it. I knew he hated me, but I didn't realize he would tamper with evidence just to see me go down. Lee's hand slips from my shoulder, but I reach to grab it, holding tight. We share a breathless, hopeful smile as Gates circles for the kill. When did you decide to edit this video? Gates demands. It wasn't a decision, as such, Decker fumbles. There were many leads. But this offers clear proof that Juan was the last person to see the victim alive. We don't know. Gates talks over him. So not only did you ignore a crucial suspect, but you deliberately withheld evidence that would help clear my client. Why did you ignore this evidence? Gates demands. Why pursue this unjustified and deeply flawed prosecution against my client when you knew full well there were better suspects more likely to have committed this crime? We tried to locate Juan, Decker argues weakly, but we couldn't find him. And you needed a suspect, Gates mocks him. Someone to put on trial, to prove to the world you weren't a bungling, incompetent detective. So you picked my client, a young woman with no criminal record, no motive, no history of violence.
She could have.
You picked her to be the scapegoat for this farce of a trial.
Gates finishes with a roar.
Silence. Decker is slumped in his seat, sweaty and broken. He knows he fucked up, and now we all know it too. No further questions, Gates finishes. The defense rests. The trial. After Decker is humiliated on the stand, my dad presses Gates to file for a mistrial. We can argue incompetence, withheld evidence, he argues, but Gates stands firm. A mistrial isn't the end, he explains. Another prosecutor could launch another case, and then we'd wind up back here, a year, 2 years from now. They might not even let her go home before a new trial. Seeing this through is the only way, Lee agrees. An innocent verdict finishes this for good. But what if I'm not found innocent after all? I want to ask, but they're all so upbeat and optimistic, I can't bring myself to be the lone voice of warning. The video changes everything, they say over again, with a breathless enthusiasm that tells me just how dire my situation was before. Now we have proof of Juan's stalking and Decker's vendetta against me, the chorus goes. The judge will have to question everything, and see Decker for the corrupt man he really is. I try to stay calm, but their hope is infectious, like sunlight warming me in my dark cell, and I sleep straight through the night for the first time in months. When I'm taken to meet Dad in the conference room of the courthouse the next morning, he greets me with a box of fresh baked pastries and a clutch of brown manila envelopes. What are those? I ask, sinking my teeth into a soft pillow of flaky donut. College letters, he replies with a smile. They came for you months ago, but I didn't want to get your hopes up, before. Quote. My hand freezes, outstretched. But won't it jinx things? I whisper. It feels way too soon to be thinking about the future, not with the trial still in progress and everything still ready to fall apart. Gates is going to finish up the defense today. Dad says he thinks we should end on the video, and not throw anything else to distract the judge. So, with closing arguments and some final motions, we'll be wrapped by tomorrow. He gives me another hopeful smile. The judge could have a verdict before the weekend. I sit down with a thump. So soon? I feel a shiver. I called and spoke to the admissions people. They all deferred your place until next year, if you want it. But you've got options. Your college fund is safe, he adds awkwardly. The money, from your mother. I never touched it. Quote. He pushes the envelopes toward me again, and despite every instinct screaming that this is a bad idea, that I'm tempting fate somehow if I look, I reach for them. University of Chicago. Bryn Mawr. Georgetown. Smith. USC. I open each envelope in turn, the paper already slit and waiting for me to slide out the cover sheets. Congratulations. Acceptances, a fat stack of them. I line them up in turn on the table, still feeling strangely uneasy. When I pictured getting my college letters, this was never how I imagined it. I was going to be waiting for the mailman at home, grabbing the pack from his outstretched hand and racing into the house to excitedly tear them open, already speed dialing Elise. I'm sorry I opened them, Dad apologizes, watching my face. I can feel the happy expectation radiating from him. I didn't want you to see, if there were any rejections. I got in, I say softly, staring at the admissions booklets, the glossy pictures of undergraduates strolling across leafy campuses. It's a world I haven't let myself imagine, or even think about, the great prospect of after. Dad beams. I know you want to try the West Coast, he adds, but I shake my head. We were going together, I say, stroking the cover of the USC packet. It wouldn't be right, walking around there, without her. I take a breath. Besides, I want to stay close to home, to you. An East Coast school. Dad's smiles widens. That would be great, sweetheart. I'd love to see you. I nod, still staring at the papers when the guard comes to summon us to the courtroom. My future, right there on the table, one path, the possibilities. But only if I make it out of this hell first. I'm close. So close. The trial. I walk into court the next morning knowing it's one of the very last times. There's nothing but legal motions and closing arguments now, before the trial ends, and it's all down to Judge Von Koppel and her cool, blonde deliberations. I expected to feel relief, but instead, I almost don't want it to end. This trial has been the only constant thing in my life for months now. First, it was the light on the horizon, keeping me going through the endless nights in prison. Now, there's a comfort to the daily routine. Dressing up in normal clothes, fixing my hair as best I can in a borrowed mirror, drinking in the view from the darkened windows of the prison van as we drive across the island to the courtroom. It's not just me, we've all fallen into a regular pattern here. Dad fetches coffee on his way in for us all. Elise's parents sit in the same spot in the back left of the courtroom every day, staring straight ahead through every witness and piece of evidence. Even Decker has his small habits and rituals, like the way he'll straighten the papers on his table into perfect angles before the judge calls us all to order, and unbutton his jacket before standing to interrogate a witness. I know it sounds crazy, that something as dramatic as a murder trial could become normal and everyday, but it is to me now. And soon, everything will be different. Ready? Lee gives me an encouraging grin as the judge settles in at the front of the room and we take our seats. Nearly over now. He's not the only one smiling. The mood in the courtroom is visibly lighter, they know we're at the end too, and I guess the reporters and families are all relieved to be able to go home soon. Tate and Lamar and everyone have had to stay on the island throughout the trial, in case they were needed to testify. Only AK comes to court every day, probably making notes for his televised trial roundup on the Clara Rose show each night. But the others stay away, and although spending a month stuck in Aruba isn't the worst fate, I know they must be ready to leave the minute the judge says that they can. I'm the only one here who's scared for this to be over. Counselors? The judge bangs her gavel for silence. Gates rises, but the other table sits empty, Decker nowhere to be seen. Von Koppel frowns. Have we seen the prosecution, Judge? There's silence. I look around, confused. Decker is always punctual and precise. In all the month of the trial, he's never once been late. Let's try to find him. The judge doesn't look impressed. She beckons Gates and a couple of people closer, and they begin to murmur in hushed tones. I sit back, on edge now. Where do you think he is? I ask Lee. I drum a pencil against the table, my nerves suddenly jittering. Who knows? Maybe he had a crisis of faith and is off contemplating his sins. He jokes, but I shake my head. Don't. Sorry. He clears his throat. Have you thought about what you'll do? Lee leans in close. His brown hair is longer than when I first met him, months ago, and brushes against his collar. When you get out of here, I mean. What's the first thing on your list? I feel that flash of panic again, like he's tempting fate, but I know he's only trying to keep my spirits up. I pause to think about it. A bath, I say at last. I'm going to spend a whole day in the tub, lock the door, use a whole bottle of bubble bath, just lie there for hours. Lee grins. Sounds good. What about you? He shrugs. I don't know, go back and see my folks, I think. You won't go back to the embassy? Lee gives me a look. I don't think so. Technically they're calling this leave, but I don't think I'll be welcome back in the diplomatic corps again, at least not for a while. I'm sorry, I say softly. He's never said anything, but I know being a part of my team has caused all kinds of problems with his job, and after Clara Rose started speculating about our relationship, it only got worse. He shakes his head. It's not your fault. I was thinking about going to law school, anyway, do this for real. You mean rescuing damsels in distress from foreign jails? I joke. You'd be great. But first, I add, can I recommend a haircut? He laughs. You should talk. Don't remind me. I groan, touching the split, sun-damaged ends of my hair. It seems silly to care about my appearance when the rest of my life is on the line, but I quickly found out in prison that vanity can almost be a form of hope. You try to keep hold of the person you used to be, with all the same shallow, flimsy worries, because letting them go would be a form of surrender. I'll put that on my list, I tell him. First, a bath, then, 8 hours in a salon. I think you look great, Lee says, almost shy. Our gaze holds a minute, and then there are footsteps, loud, as Decker sweeps in. He's clutching an armful of papers, his assistant scurrying behind. And here he is, the judge says icily. I believe we have some pre-closing motions to argue. Shall we go to my chambers? A moment, Your Honor. Decker deposits the papers and pauses to take a breath. He turns and shoots me a look so full of triumph that it freezes the blood in my veins. I would like to call a witness to the stand. What's going on? I whisper, anxious, but Gates is already approaching the front of the room with Decker quickly following behind. They argue there for a moment with the judge, their voices too low to reach me. What's he doing? I ask Lee again, but he just shrugs helplessly. I don't know. But he can't, can he? I ask. The prosecution finished, it's against the rules. Sometimes, the judge will let them. Lee watches the front of the room. If it's important enough. Decker's new witness must be, because after another few minutes of hushed argument, Gates returns, downcast. She's allowing it, he says. We all look to each other, not sure what this means. Is there anything I need to know? Gates leans in close, his expression like stone. If there is, you need to tell me right now. No. I shake my head helplessly. You know everything. Decker clears his throat. I'd like to call Melanie Chong back to the stand. Mel? My head snaps around to watch her enter the courtroom. She's dressed in a neat blouse and pleated skirt, hair smoothed back under a wide blue headband. Mel takes a seat in the witness chair, and raises her hand to swear the oath. Anna? Gates urges again, under his breath. What does she know? Nothing, I insist again, but Gates doesn't look convinced. I rack my brain, but nothing comes to mind, nothing that would have Decker swaggering around so confidently, like the trial is as good as won. She was off diving with the others, she wasn't even there that day. Gates nods grimly, scribbling a note. Let's see what this is about, then, he says, turning back to the front. There's silence, and then Decker begins. You already testified here before, Miss Chong. Yes. But you contacted my office yesterday to retract that testimony. Yes. Mel meets my eyes briefly, then looks away. So what you told this court several weeks ago wasn't true? No, it was, I just. I didn't tell you everything. Gates leaps to his feet. Objection. The witness has admitted perjuring herself. Anything else she has to say now cannot be seen as reliable. I'm inclined to agree. Von Koppel flickers an eyebrow to Decker. I understand. However, given the gravity of the situation, and the fact that the witness voluntarily recanted her statements knowing full well the consequences she'd face, I believe her testimony should be heard. I hold my breath until the judge nods. Carry on, for now. My heart sinks. I look desperately at Mel, but her gaze is fixed straight down on her hands, clasped in her lap. Miss Chong. Decker approaches gently, his tone soft and encouraging. What did you tell me, when you contacted me? Mel looks up. Anna knew about the affair, that Elise and Tate were hooking up. I freeze. She says she didn't, but she's lying, Mel continues, her voice ringing out. She knew, and she hated Elise for it. She was so jealous, she couldn't take it. I grab Gates's arm. It's not true, I whisper. She's making it all up. Gates shakes me off, staring intently at Mel. How do you know this? Decker prompts her. I heard them fighting about it, before she died. But you were on the dive trip, on the other side of the island. Mel shakes her head. This was the day before. In the afternoon. Everyone else was on the beach, but I came back to the house, and I heard them fighting. Anna was screaming and yelling. It was so loud. I stayed for a minute, but I didn't know what to do, so I left. I shake my head, heart pounding. It's lies, all of it. There was no fight, none. We were back at the house, mixing drinks and hanging out, laughing over some dumb internet video. That was the night we went out to the bar again, when Elise and I went to go sit on the sand, and I wound up yelling at Mel. I stop. Is this what it's about, the things I said to her, about her tagging along? Could she really be so petty, to lie up on the witness stand just to pay me back? Decker wheels around. You heard the defendant fighting with the victim? Yes. Mel's lips are pressed together in a thin line, determined. She was saying, how could you do this to me? I'll never forgive you. I'll kill you. All kinds of things. I'll kill you. Decker stops. You heard her say that? Threaten the victim? Yes, Mel says firmly. That's what she said. I can't take this. It's hard to breathe, like something's pressing down on my chest. I clutch for Gates again, but he's staring stonily ahead. The judge interrupts, leaning down toward Mel. Do you understand the charges for lying under oath, Miss Chong? She nods again. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have, but I didn't want to make her look bad. Mel's lip trembles, but there's something defiant in her expression. I'm sorry, Anna. She looks out at me, tearful. I didn't want to think that you could do it. But I have to tell the truth. She's lying. I can't stop myself. I yell out, rising to my feet. Can't you see it? She's lying. I feel hands grabbing me, Gates, or Lee, I don't know, but I struggle against them. Why are you doing this to me? I scream at Mel as they drag me from the room. Why won't you tell them the truth? The funeral. My mom dies on a Wednesday, the week before Christmas. Any other year, there would be parties and holiday dinners, cards and twinkling lights, and holly wreaths hanging from the mantel. We would bake sugar cookies from a box mix and decorate the tree, playing carols and old Frank Sinatra songs. But instead, I sit at her bedside, watching her die. It's not like the movies. She doesn't pull me close and whisper inspirational words about how I'm brave and strong, and she'll always be with me, before gently closing her eyes and drifting away. No, my mother dies slowly. Angry. She falls away, then claws her way back with a gasp and a groan, clinging to the edge of the world with brittle, cracked nails and wheezing breaths. She spits and babbles, furious that this isn't the peaceful slide into oblivion she was promised. It was her decision all along, but still, her body fights death, betraying her all over again as she begs for an end, and it keeps holding on. It takes the whole day for my mother to die. I sit there, clutching her cold hand, watching every minute of it. Anna? The voice comes in the dark, hesitant. I look up numbly to find Elise, silhouetted in the light from the hallway. Anna, baby, it's time to get ready. I don't reply. I'm on the floor at the foot of my bed, my legs folded beneath me, a half-empty bottle of vodka at my side. I don't remember how I got here, or how long I've been huddled under my comforter. It's days since Mom finally sucked in her last desperate breath and ceased to exist. They've slipped past in a dark blur of sympathy and hushed voices, and strangers traipsing in and out of the house, my dad's blank stare, and the welcoming cocoon of my bedroom and the black burn of alcohol in my veins. I'll pick you out something to wear. Elise pries the bottle from my limp hand, then crosses the room to open my drapes. I flinch from the light that floods in from outside, gray clouds and snowy winter skies. Did you eat something? She crouches beside me. Anna? Can you remember when you last had something to eat? I stare at her blankly. Okay, I'll go fix you something. Elise strokes my hair softly. People have been bringing casseroles, there's all kinds of stuff. You get in the shower. She takes me by the shoulders and pulls me slowly to my feet. I sag against her, my head on her shoulder. I'm empty, too numb to even try. She holds me up. Come on, Anna. You have to. I shake my head. I can't. I know, but it's just today, you just have to get through today. I stay there, clinging onto her like she's the only thing keeping me from going under. And maybe she is. Our fight before break is nothing now, it was swept aside the minute I found out about Mom's plan to end treatment. I called Elise right away, hyperventilating through my tears, and she was on my doorstep within the hour. We drove all night, just circling the city, the neon lights blurring through my tears as I huddled there in the passenger seat beside her and tried to understand. But I can't, not then, and not now either. Finally, Elise pulls away. She cradles my face. I know you don't want to do this, but I'm here, okay? I'll be right by you, the whole time. I'm not going anywhere. I manage a nod. Let's get this over with, then. I let her steer me to the bathroom and into the shower. I barely notice as Elise undresses me. I just stand, dumb, under the hot jets of water, while she bends me like a doll to rub shampoo into my scalp and carefully rinse the suds away. Back in the bedroom, she feeds me lasagna from a Tupperware dish, then dresses me, fresh underwear, thick tights, a plain black dress she or my dad must have bought, because she lifts it, fresh, from tissue paper in a crisp paper bag by the door. She brushes my hair out and braids it, damp against my neck, then paints my face with concealer and blush. It's soothing, in a way, her soft hands against my skin. She puts me back together, like broken pieces, and slowly, the haze of drunken grief slips from me. I wake up. There, she murmurs, stepping back to examine her work. I stare at my reflection, pale skin, almost as pale as my mom's. I look like someone died. Elise's eyes widen, then a faint smile tugs at the edge of her lips. You're right, she agrees. Anyone would think we're going to a funeral. I feel a laugh rise in me, bitter and bleak. I reach for the red lipstick on the edge of my bureau, then slowly paint my mouth until it's a vivid scarlet slash across the pale planes of my face. I tilt my head, assessing. Better. Elise takes it from me and quickly does her own. Matching. She blots her lips together, meeting my gaze in the mirror. I'm right here, she says again quietly, taking my hand. I won't let go. She doesn't, not through the service, sat on the hard pews of the cold, echoing church. Not through the receiving line, as Mom's friends and survivors group supporters envelop me in a never-ending parade of hugs and cooing sympathy condolence. And not as we sit in the back of the car, driving slowly through the cemetery to a fresh grave near the top of the hill. The wind is icy, and it whips around us as I get out of the car. I see the others assemble at the graveside, Chelsea, Max, Lamar, and Mel, all wearing matching dark coats and expressions of sympathy. There's one face missing. Did you talk to Tate? I ask, unsteady in the black pumps she picked out. He's still in Aspen. Something stiffens in Elise's expression. He says they'll be back on Sunday. It's not his fault, I defend him weakly. It's the holidays, it's hard to switch flights. She doesn't reply, just tucks my scarf tighter around my neck, smoothing back a strand of hair flying free around my face. Nearly over, she whispers, guiding me into position in the front row beside the grave. The next part of the service begins, interring her bones back to the earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I let the priest's words drift over me, thinking instead of Tate. The truth is, I'm glad he's not here to see me like this. Such a wreck. I feel raw, and bruised, as if the worst, darkest parts of myself have been spilled out onto the frozen ground beside my mother's grave, on display to the world. Tate knows me laughing and at ease, centered and calm, not this ragged mess of a girl. And it may be shallow, but I want to keep it that way, to be bright and good for him, not an endless black hole of grief. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I look up. It's my dad's turn, reading, with a single red rose clutched in his hand. They're lowering the body now, a slow grind down into the ground. The words wash through me, and I let out a sharp, twisted laugh. Of course she's there, I mutter, suddenly so angry. Where the fuck else would she be? Elise's grip tightens on me. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. Suddenly, I can't breathe. After sitting, numb, through so many saccharine poems and Hallmark card consolations, I can't take it anymore. They're pretending like this is all some big tragedy, an accident. As if she didn't choose to leave me. But it's a joke. Cruelly taken from her family, they say, but the truth is, she killed herself. She chose this. She could have fought it, stayed with me longer, but she didn't love me enough. She never has. The pain comes welling up, and with it, a rage that burns so fierce I feel like I'm about to pass out. Elise, I gasp, my chest burning, but she holds me up. She holds me through it all, until Dad finishes his poem and tosses the rose down onto the coffin, and the glossy lacquered wood is swallowed up by the dark earth forever. We drive back to my house, silent in the backseat of a town car. Dad has invited more people over to celebrate her life, he says, but I've played my part. I'm done. I hurry straight up to my bedroom, and find the bottle of prescription pills tucked in my drawer. I sneaked them from my mom's room, before the doctor cleared it out. I shake out one, then another, small and white in the palm of my hand, sweet against my tongue. There's a noise. I look up sharply, but it's just Elise. She's got a bottle of whiskey with her. You started without me, she says, kicking her shoes aside. She holds out her hand, so I pass the pill bottle. She reads the label. Xanax, good choice. She slips one into her mouth, and sighs. When I die, I want a real party. None of that poetry, weepy bullshit. She leaps onto my bed, scooting back against the pillows. I flip the main lights off and follow, so we're lying there together in the glow of my bedside lamp. I sink deeper into the pillows, exhaling. Don't talk like that. About what, death? She props herself up on one elbow, looking down at my face. Too soon? Very. Very soon. That doesn't make any sense. You think any of this does? I feel the chemicals start working their magic, the smooth hiss and fizzle as they slip through my bloodstream. Elise reaches down and gently strokes my face, trailing her finger along my cheek, my nose, the line of my jaw. I smile, relieved that it's over now, that she's here just like she said. Tell me I'll be okay, I say, slipping further into the numbness. Tell me it won't always feel this way. It won't. Elise curls in closer to me, her head resting on the pillows just inches from my face. I stare into her eyes, the promise there. You'll be just fine. I know she's right, but somehow, that makes it sadder. I've been losing Mom for years now, ever since that first diagnosis, and I realize that part of this pain is more from the mother she'll never be to me than the mom she really was. Something in me finally breaks. I start to cry, quiet tears slipping out of my body like release. I can't do this, I whisper, clutching Elise. I can't. She left me. She could have stayed and fought this, and she just gave up instead. Maybe if I'd been better. Quote. No. Elise stops me with a kiss, sweet and tender on my lips. She cradles my face, unblinking. It's not on you, it's on her. It's all on her. I inhale, shaky. You won't leave me, I say, a quiet note of desperation in my voice. Never. Elise wipes the tears from my cheeks and kisses me again. I'm yours, and you're mine. Always. Always. I fall into her, feeling the gentle pull of oblivion. It's dark, and warm, and safe here in her arms. I kiss her back, and wait for the pain to be over. Recess. They take me back to the conference room after Mel's testimony, and threaten to put me back in handcuffs and shackles unless I calm down. She'll be fine, I hear Gates reassuring the guard, but I can't focus, I can't stop shaking. I tear away from them, pacing back and forth in the small space. I was so close to the end, so close, and now it's all ruined. Lee edges closer, holding out a bottle of water, but I push it away. She's lying, I tell them again, my voice scratched and sobbing. She couldn't stand it that Elise picked me. She always hated how close we were, that we didn't need her tagging along. I look up to Gates and my dad, but they're frozen, their eyes cast away from me. I bet she's been waiting for this all along. My voice rises with desperation. To pay me back, for all those mean things I said? It's not true. You have to believe me, I yell, none of it is true. I can't believe she's doing this to me. It's not some high school bitch fight, a war over BFFs and party invites. This is life and death, my whole future on the line, and it's just her word against mine. The maid, I suddenly remember, stopping dead. I turn to them, gripping the back of a chair. She was there, in the house, with me and Elise. She can testify, say there wasn't any fight. Gates exchanges a look with my dad. What? I demand. It's true, she came every day. What's her name, Martha? Where is she? We have to get her on the stand. She can back me up. Marta and her family moved off the island, Gates says slowly. So? I cry. The judge can make them come, can't she? Force her to testify. Gates and my dad share another look, then Gates lets out a sigh. They moved to America, to work for the Dempseys. I stop. I don't understand. It was a payoff, he says slowly. Back before Tate cut his deal. Remember, he was a suspect too. She probably saw him with Elise, something they wanted to keep hidden. Gates explains. They gave her a job, probably got her a visa, a house, too. But that doesn't mean she can't testify, I say, desperate. She was there. She can tell them all, Melanie's lying. Gates shakes his head. Even if the judge compels her to come back, it won't be credible. Decker will say part of the payoff was lying about this. But we didn't pay her off. I cry. That was Tate. It won't make a difference. I grab the chair and hurl it to the back of the room. It clatters against the wall with a screech of metal. But it's not true. I gasp, the pressure pinning down on my chest again. None of it is true. I sink to the floor, tears coming now, uncontrollably. How could Mel do it, sit up there and lie like that? She had to know what it would mean for me, that I'll spend the rest of my life in prison now, because of something she made up to spite me. I gasp for air, shaking. From a long way off, I hear a knock at the door. Gates goes to answer it, but my dad doesn't move, he just stands there, stranded on the other side of the room. I don't know how long I'm huddled there, weeping, but eventually my sobs fade away, leaving nothing but a thundering headache and the dry soreness of my throat. Lee crouches down beside me and offers the water again. This time, I take it. The door opens. Gates returns. We should ask to recess until tomorrow, Lee says, but Gates shakes his head. He rights the chair from where I hurled it, then sits down at the table. Anna? I look up from the floor. I just talked to Decker, he says slowly. He's willing to cut a deal. I freeze. What kind of deal? My dad asks urgently. Manslaughter, Gates says with a slow exhale. He wants a 10-year sentence, but you'd be up for parole before then. 8 years. There's silence. I look around the room. Gates looks relieved. My dad is still staring at the floor. Lee is thoughtful. Why would he do that? I ask finally. With what Mel said, why would he offer me something? Plenty of reasons. Gates can't stop smiling now, like this is a good thing, like he's relieved. Mel lied the first time on the stand, maybe he doesn't want to risk the judge ignoring her. Then there's the video, with Juan. He's trying for first-degree murder here, he has to prove you meant to kill her, that you planned it. But I didn't. This is a good deal, he says. Better than I thought we'd get. I try to think, to pull back from the edge of despair and see this clearly. Manslaughter. A plea. I'd have to say I did it, I say, realizing. I'd have to say I'm guilty. Manslaughter is unintentional death, Gates quickly replies. He's saying you didn't mean to kill her. You fought, you lost control. A crime of passion, in the moment. But I didn't. I look at them, plaintive. I didn't kill her. I know it's a lot to think about. Gates's tone is gentle. But this is a limited time offer. He wants it wrapped up before the judge calls us back for closing arguments. I have to decide now? I'm sorry. Gates looks apologetic. I know it's fast, but this is a good thing. How can you say that? I cry. It's prison. I'd be guilty. I'd go back there for years. My words echo. Gates looks away. You think I should take it? My heart twists. He sighs. I do. A lot of evidence is circumstantial, but it doesn't look good. The affair, Mel's testimony. She's lying. I cry again. Either way, do you want to risk it with the judge? Gates leans across the table, solemn. If she convicts you of murder, that's a 20-year sentence, minimum. 20 years. At least, this way, you'd be out sooner. You'd have a life, after. After. I choke back another sob. Daddy? I ask, my voice wavering. I don't know. I can't think straight. What should I do? Tell me. My father swallows and finally meets my eyes. Gates is right, sweetie, he says quietly. You should take the deal. The words are soft, but they crash through me like thunder. I stare at him, dumbfounded, and then I see it, the faint flicker in his eyes. He tries to look away and hide it, but it's too late. I see. He thinks I'm guilty. My heart breaks wide open. 8 years isn't so long, He hurries to my side, trying to cover the betrayal. You'd be 25. That's still young, you could have a life, do whatever you want. But I didn't do it. My voice is thin and tired. I can't move, not a single limb. He sits beside me on the floor. I didn't. Quote. I'm sorry, sweetie, is all he can say, over and over. He hugs me close, and for a moment I'm a kid again, crawling into his lap. Before the long work nights in the hospital rooms, and everything began to change. Before I wound up here, staring into the bleak abyss of years in prison, my whole youth, locked away in that terrible place. I'm so sorry. 8 years. I was going to go to college, some sun-drenched campus far away. I was going to take film and women's studies classes in literature and ancient philosophy. I was going to study abroad in Prague, and walk those golden bridges. Sip coffee in tiny cafes and flirt with cute waiters. I was going to learn to surf, and touch type, and how to change a flat tire. I was going to try bangs, and dark eyeliner, wear scarlet lipstick and tartan capes. I was going to fall in love again. I was going to road trip across the country, stay in cheap motels and collect postcards from every state. I was going to see the world. I was going to move into my own apartment and furnish it with cheap thrift store finds, sip tea in the afternoon from mismatched vintage china, in a space that was all my own. I was going to be alone in a strange city where nobody knew my name. I was going to finish reading Great Expectations. I was going to have another macaroni night with my dad in our kitchen back at home. I was going to see a midnight screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show with a rowdy costumed crowd. I was going to get 2 kittens and name them Eleanor and Marianne. I was going to volunteer at the cancer hospice. I was going to fight for something I believed in. I was going to grow herbs in terracotta pots outside my kitchen window. I was going to write something one day that people would read. Maybe even love. I was going to kiss a lot of boys. I was going to stay up all night talking, and know that it was just the beginning. I was going to get married, in a strapless white dress with my mother's veil. I was going to graduate high school in my cap and gown. I was going to dance through 100 more rock shows, drenched in sweat and songs. I was going to spend a summer backpacking through Europe. I was going to sing along to the radio every day. I was going to get my boots fixed before fall. I was going to buy that red belt I saw in the store. I was going to watch all the shows I left on my DVR. I was going to see it snow at Christmas time in New York. I was going to get an A on my history midterm. I was going to get a new car for graduation. I was going to make him proud. I was going to start all over again. I was going to be brave, and good, and bold. I was going to love him forever. I was going to hold her hand till the very end. Now, I tell them no. 8 years is too long. Even just 1 year more of this would destroy me, but more than that, I can't plead guilty. I won't sign the deal and say I killed her, when I've spent so long fighting to clear my name. I'll take my chances on the judge instead, and all of Decker's failings. I know I'd rather kill myself than go back to that prison again. I have to try for freedom, or nothing at all. Closing arguments. Prosecution. Elise Warren was the light of her parents' life. A kind, fun-loving girl who loved to spend time with her friends, volunteer, join school clubs and activities. A straight-A student, she could have had any future that she chose. But Elise will never get to live those dreams, because her life was cut brutally short by a frenzied attack. On the afternoon of March 20th, Elise was attacked in her bedroom as she prepared to go meet her friends. This wasn't an accident, or a quick death. No, you've heard from expert forensic witnesses how Elise was stabbed 13 times in the chest and stomach with a kitchen knife and then left to die in a pool of her own blood. She would have died gasping for air, feeling her own life and that bright future slip away as she slowly bled to death. Now, the defense has tried to pin the blame for this murder on anyone but the woman here on trial today. They've told you that this was a break-in gone wrong, that somebody scaled the back wall to the house in broad daylight and, when faced with Elise, instead of turning and running, or simply knocking her down, they instead picked up the knife and killed her. But a murder case isn't about theories, it's based on evidence. And the evidence in this case points to one woman, and one woman alone, the defendant, Anna Chevalier. Experts have testified that the deadly wounds inflicted on the victim were the result of a passionate frenzy, from somebody who likely knew the victim. The defendant's fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. Her physical DNA and hairs were near the body. And as you've heard over the past weeks, the defendant had both motive for the killing and a pattern of violent behavior, which makes Elise Warren's death seem like a tragic inevitability. You've heard how the victim was having a secret affair with Miss Chevalier's boyfriend, and that the defendant was sent into a jealous rage when she discovered the truth, fighting with the victim and threatening to kill her. Now, threats are one thing, but we've found that the defendant has a long record of violent physical outbursts. Time and time again, she's lashed out at the people around her, inflicting serious physical damage. What's more, the defendant has no alibi for a portion of the afternoon of the murder, and even lied to police about her whereabouts that day. These lies undermine everything the defendant has said to you during this trial. How can we believe a single word she said? She denies knowing about the affair, when her friend has testified to overhearing the defendant fight with the victim about it. She denies coercing her boyfriend into giving her an alibi for the afternoon, and she has even tried to pin the blame on the victim for their partying and reckless behavior, when other friends have all testified that the victim was a model student and citizen before she became friends with Miss Chevalier. As we've seen, since the murder and throughout the trial, the defendant displays a troubling lack of responsibility. In the days after the murder, she was seen laughing and joking with her boyfriend, and in fact, just hours after discovering the body, Miss Chevalier seemed more concerned with buying a soda than the fact that her best friend was dead. These are the marks of a remorseless killer, who struck the victim in a premeditated attack fueled by sexual jealousy and rage. This is a woman who deserves to pay for the life she's taken, and the lies she's told. A young woman is dead. Nothing can bring her back, but justice must be done. So, I ask you to deliver justice to Elise Warren's parents and friends, and to the memory of Elise herself. Find the defendant guilty, and award her the maximum sentence permitted for her crimes. Defense. Justice. The prosecution likes to talk a lot about it, as if prosecuting an innocent teenage girl for a crime she didn't commit could ever be justified. The fact is, Klaus Decker has botched and mishandled this case from the very start. Responding to 911 calls from the scene of the crime, police found broken glass in the room, indicating a break-in. The victim's friends testified that Elise had been harassed by two men in the days leading up to the murder, Nicholas Van Oten, and the market trader known only as Juan, who had a record of theft and break-ins. Yet instead of pursuing these suspects, Decker instead concocted an outlandish theory about the crime, deciding that the defendant, a young girl with no criminal record, with no real violence to her name, had somehow plotted to kill her best friend, a girl she counted closer than any sister. You've seen the extent to which Decker has gone to prove this so-called theory, tampering with video evidence to conceal Juan's stalking of the victim, and putting witnesses on the stand to contradict their own testimony. He wants you to assess the evidence in this case. The fact is, the evidence against my client is purely circumstantial. Due to police failure to preserve the body, the exact time of death of the victim is still unknown. No blood from the victim was found on the defendant's clothes or person. Several other fingerprints were found on the knife, including that of her boyfriend, Tate Dempsey, and others who were staying in the house. The room was easily accessed from the beach, and several other people knew of the way inside. As to the defendant's behavior after the murder, it's clear that Anna Chevalier was in shock. You've seen expert psychologists testify about the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, and how the delayed reaction to grief can affect different people.
Seeing her dear friend lying in a pool of blood was a deeply traumatic experience for the defendant, a trauma worsened only by the aggressive interrogations she suffered at the hands of the prosecution.
In her testimony here, Anna has shown she is a caring, empathetic young woman who has remained admirably strong in the face of her imprisonment. The prosecution has tried to paint her as a cold-blooded killer, somehow sexually fixated on the victim. He has shown you photos and isolated incidents to try to build his case, yet this is nothing more than baseless slander. Any one of us could be made to look a monster, with selective readings of our history, but for every photograph he shows you out of context, I can show you another side to the defendant, a caring, thoughtful, intelligent young woman who has bravely faced tragic loss before in her life, with the death of her mother. That is the real Anna Chevalier, not the wild party girl the prosecution would have you believe. The law calls for you to convict my client only beyond a reasonable doubt. Time and again, we have shown that this doubt exists, in the lack of evidence supporting the prosecution's case and Miss Chevalier's supposed motive for the crime. To convict her now would be a tragedy no less than Elise Warren's murder, for just as that young woman lost her life, so too would Miss Chevalier if sent back to prison to serve decades for a crime she didn't commit. Justice demands her acquittal. The evidence demands her acquittal. I place her life in your hands, and urge you to do the right thing. Thank you. Waiting. The judge doesn't come back with a verdict that day, nor the next one. I get up every morning and leave prison like it could be the last time, then spend the day in the conference room at the courthouse, pacing, nervously waiting for news. Gates and Lee swear it's a good thing, that it means she's taking her time to pick apart every little detail of the case, but I won't let myself get swept up in false hopes. She could have made her mind up on day one, I tell them, and just be back in her office, catching up on her DVR and gossip magazines. Lee gives me a look. I know this is hard, waiting, he says. But it's the best you could hope for, it taking so long. We always knew Decker's case was weak, and now she gets to see that for herself. I sigh. I know, I just... What if... Don't. He stops me. You've just got to have faith. I look at him, his brown eyes so calm and trusting. He's the one person who has stuck with me through it all, despite the lies people told about me, all the terrible things they have said. How can you still believe in me, after everything? Even they don't. Quote. I drop my voice. Gates and Dad are on their cell phones, deep in two different conversations about legal process and our chances of getting the verdict overturned. For all the delay, I know they still expect the judgment to come back guilty. Maybe they even think I deserve it. Lee leans closer. I know you, he says softly. I know you're a good person. And even if this comes back wrong, it's not the end. We can appeal, he reminds me. Get Decker's evidence thrown out. Whatever it takes, I'll be here. I want to believe him. He's been here before, after all, but I'm not his sister. I can't stay hopeful through years in prison. I'm not that strong. The hours tick past, with no news. Then, just before 4 p.m., a knock comes on the door. We all leap up. A guard beckons Gates out. He exits, giving me a nod as he passes. Oh God, I breathe. My skin prickles hot with nerves, my stomach turns over. This is it. Lee grabs my hand and squeezes, but when Gates comes back in a moment later, he quickly shakes his head. It's not that, he says. There's someone who wants to see you. He pauses, uncomfortable. Tate Dempsey wants to talk with you. Tate. I blink. Months of silence, all my letters left unanswered, and now he wants to see me? You don't have to, Lee tells me, but I slowly shake my head. Yes, I say, suddenly calm. Let him in. Gates nods to someone in the hallway. My dad gets up, clearing his throat. We'll, give you some privacy. They exit, but Lee is the last to leave. Are you sure? He asks. I can stay, if you want. He stops talking as Tate steps into the room. I glance up, almost afraid to look at him after all this time. But there he is, looking just the same as ever, neatly dressed in a preppy Oxford button-down and dark pants, his hair golden and tousled. He stands by the doorway, awkwardly slouching with his hands in his pockets. Finally, I let my gaze settle on his face. God, how I loved that face. It's fine, I tell Lee softly. Really? He nods. I'll be right outside, he says, stepping around Tate and closing the door behind him. Silence. I watch Tate scuff the ground with his spotless sneakers, looking anywhere but directly at me. Finally, I sigh. What do you want? He walks closer, then stops. Can I, quote. Sit? It's almost funny, that he would think it matters. Sure. Whatever you want. He lowers himself carefully onto one of the folding metal chairs, and takes a breath. Then another. How are you doing? He asks. My mouth drops open. Is he serious? Just great, I reply, sarcastic. Except for this whole pesky murder conviction hanging over my head. Tate seems to crumple in front of me. God, Anna, I'm so sorry. He reaches for my hand across the table, but I flinch back. It wasn't my idea, to cut the deal, I swear to you. But my parents said I had to. Decker was coming after me, they said I would go on trial for sure. Tate stares at me, imploring, with those blue eyes I know by heart. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. I burst out. I'm here because of you. I lied for you. You're the one who sold me out, you betrayed me. Tate hangs his head. I fight to stay calm. There's nothing he can say, I realize. Nothing at all. He was weak and selfish, and he let me down in every way he could. But what else was he going to do? He always wanted to be so good, the perfect son, the best boyfriend. Elise was right. In the end, all that perfection had to fall apart sometime. I swallow, gathering my strength. When did it start? I ask softly. You and Elise. Tell me. Please. Tate reluctantly lifts his head. Anna. You owe me this much, at least. He looks away again. Jordan's party, he says finally. It was, maybe a month before the trip? I nod. I remember. My parents were on at me, about summer internships, and volunteering, and I just wanted to forget it all. You were home, sick, and I wound up out in their gazebo with Elise and a bottle of tequila. Even after all this time, hearing it still stings. I fight the image of them together, sprawled, laughing. The looks that turned into more. But, why? I ask. I don't understand. You said you loved me. I did. Tate looks helpless. It just happened. And kept happening. He looks shameful, at least. You know Elise, what she was like. She made you feel like everything was dangerous. A risk. Like, you were the center of everything, you know? I do. He stops, tugging at the skin around a hangnail. She said she wanted to know what it felt like for you. Being with me. A noise comes from the door, interrupting us. Gates is there. It's time, he says. She has a verdict. Oh God. I get to my feet unsteady. Anna. Tate looks up at me. I'm sorry, you have to know. I never meant for any of this. I have to go, I cut him off. I follow Gates and my dad back down the hall to the courtroom, the guard flanking me every step of the way. It's okay, sweetie, my dad says, but his voice is weak and uncertain. I falter in the doorway, suddenly realizing everything that's waiting for me. My freedom, or the end of my life completely. A hand goes to my back, steering me gently across the threshold. I walk, numb, to the table, and sit one final time. Decker is already in his seat, looking smug and confident. Daddy? I whisper, panicked, but he doesn't hear me. He's staring straight ahead, his foot tapping in an uneven rhythm. The judge enters and takes her seat. She looks out at us from over those thin gold spectacles. Would the defendant please stand? I don't know how, but somehow, I manage to rise to my feet. My whole body is shaking, blood pounding in my ears. I try to find some clue on her face, but her expression is unnervingly blank. Wouldn't she smile at me? Wouldn't she give me some kind of sign if the verdict was good? I have reviewed all the evidence presented to me, and in the matter of the prosecution versus Anna Chevalier, I have reached a verdict. The courtroom is completely silent as the judge's voice rings out. On the charge of murder in the first degree. ... quote. I don't move. I don't even breathe. My heartbeat takes over as I watch her lips form the words. I can't hear a thing, but I see it now, written on all their faces. My dad lets out a sob. Lee's body crumples. Gates hangs his head, slack-jawed. My legs give way. I fall into blackness, and it's over. The night. Her body is on the floor, half naked in pink bikini bottoms with her tank top ripped away in ribbons and stab wounds cutting scarlet across her chest. Tate gets to her first. He hugs her torso against him, the trails of blonde hair matted with blood, her face pressing against his blue shirt. Elise. Melanie whimpers over and over again by the wreckage of the door, her voice shrill and gasping. Chelsea falls to her knees in the blood, taking Elise's lifeless hand. AK and Lamar stand beside me, not breathing. She was like this. Max's voice is breaking, tears streaming down his face. He's crumpled in a heap by the open balcony doors, broken glass scattered on the floor. The door was smashed and open, and she was just lying there. I didn't touch her. There's blood everywhere. Dark and thick, pooling around the body, smeared across the terracotta tiles. Her body is sticky with it, and for a terrible moment, we're all frozen. Staring. She must have struggled. Clawed for rescue, gasping and half dead. And now she's gone. God, someone cover her up. My voice breaks, but nobody moves, so I quickly pull off my jacket and lay it gently over her body. It's too small. Her legs splay out from underneath, pale against the blood. Her arms hang limply from Tate's clutched embrace. Melanie sobs louder. We should go, Lamar says suddenly, backing away. This is a crime scene, right? We shouldn't be in here, messing things up. Chelsea whirls on him. This isn't CSI. This is Elise, this is. ... Her whole body shudders, and Lamar rushes to hold her up. I swallow, looking around at the devastation. Come on, he's right. We can't be here. AK pulls Max from his corner, and Melanie stumbles on ahead. Tate doesn't move. Tay? I put a hand on his shoulder. Tay, she's gone. There's nothing you can do. His body shakes, and then he places her carefully back on the floor, tenderly brushing hair from her eyes. They stare up at me, blue and lifeless. A wave of nausea rolls through me, and I have to look away. I pull Tate to his feet and we slowly head out front, to where the others are waiting on the paved driveway in the glare of security lights. Who would do this? Melanie finally demands, her voice raw. Who would do this to her? I close my eyes and sink back against Tate's chest, feeling his arms press tightly around me. But the sight of her body stays vivid in my mind, so red, and torn, and empty. They'll find him, Lamar says quietly, Chelsea sobbing into his neck. We'll make him pay. We wait in a silence punctuated by sobs. Headlights pass on the main street nearby. We can faintly hear music from the hotel down the beach. Behind us, the ocean is an inky shadow beyond the bright lights of the bars. And Elise is gone now, forever. 3 months later. Now, Anna, I know that we all want to hear, what did you feel when you heard that verdict being read? I pause, flashing back for a moment to that day in the courtroom and the few seconds that changed everything. Relief, I finally answer with a small smile. Just relief. I was overwhelmed, I could hardly speak. After all that time, expecting the worst, to finally be found innocent. And it wasn't just about me, I add quickly. I was relieved for Elise, too. The worst part of all of it was knowing that if I was found guilty, the person who really killed her would be getting away with it. At least now, maybe they can find him. Clara smiles at me, warm and supportive. She's walking beside me in the graveyard, fall leaves tumbling red and orange to the ground around us. The interview setting was their idea, of course, to cap my homecoming tell-all with a heartfelt visit to Elise's grave. I didn't want to do it, I didn't want to ever lay eyes on Clara Rose again, but the money they were offering was too big to pass up. From the moment the verdict came back innocent, we've had networks and newspapers all clamoring for my exclusive interview. Every time I said no, it only made them chase harder, so in the end it was easier just to pick one and be done with it. And after all the money I cost him, it's the least I can do for my dad to try to pay him back somehow. So what's ahead for you now? Clara asks, bundled in a fitted powder blue jacket. I have a white woolen coat on, and pink mittens, the result of intense debate among the wardrobe team. They wanted me in red, but I wasn't about to fall for that again. I insisted on the white, worn over a knee-length skirt and a pale pastel sweater. The colors of innocence. I'm taking some time, I reply. Spending time with my family and friends. It's good just to be home again for now. I missed it so much. Then I'm thinking about college. I'd like to study law, eventually, I add. This whole experience has shown me how important it is to have people who believe in you, and who fight for what's right. Inspirational. Clara nods. Just wonderful. Now, I know so many of our viewers were rooting for you, she coos, sending their thoughts and prayers all through your detention and trial. Do you have any message for them? Just thank you. I clasp my hand to my chest, looking directly into the camera. The people who never gave up on me. It means more than you could ever know. And thank you, Anna, for sharing your story with us. Clara smiles. I know that everyone here, across the country, wishes you all the best in what's to come. Thank you, Clara, I tell her warmly. And, cut. You get that? Clara yells across to the producer. He gives the thumbs up. Can we set up the graveside shots now? Maybe some more powder on Anna? I take my microphone off and let the makeup woman dab at my face as they dismantle the lights and rigging from around Elise's grave. The headstone is fresh, gleaming marble, and there's a flickering tea light set on top. Here. A production assistant hands me a bunch of flowers to set on the grave. Peonies, right? I nod. They're out of season, but they were always her favorite. Something about this should be real, at the very least. Good work, Clara chats, checking her cell phone. We'll start running the previews tonight. Have you finalized your book deal yet? We're still talking to people, I answer coolly. I haven't picked a publisher yet. Well, let me know when it's coming out. I'd love to have you back. Of course she would. Sure, I reply, with a fake smile. I'll have my agent set it up. They finally clear the area, then walk me through the staging of the final scene. It's a long-distance shot, wide angle from across the graveyard. They want me standing at her graveside, then kneeling to place the flowers down, preferably with a single teardrop sliding down my well-powdered cheek. I follow their directions obediently, take after take, as they struggle against the wind and confetti of fall leaves. I don't mind it so much. After everything, I know how important a single shot can be, the story that can replace facts and hard evidence with just a single, perfect frame. One more time? The producer calls. I nod, and walk slowly back to the grave. Elise Judith Warren. Loving daughter, beloved friend. Always in our hearts. I lean down, and gently place the flowers on the damp grass. I trace the letters of the headstone, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. I still miss her, every day. When they call it a tragedy, they're right. We could have still been together, if only she'd been true to me. If she'd only known what she was bringing on herself, maybe she would have thought twice. Instead, she had to go and break my heart. And, cut. They tell me it's a wrap, and slowly the crew dismantles, packing up the vans and heading out. But I stay, right by her grave, until the last car winds its way out toward the main gates, and I'm finally alone. The skies are gray and overcast, the graveyard, totally empty. I reach into my coat pocket and pull it out, the necklace. The chipped metal of the pentagram pendant, the chain broken, still stained with her blood. I close my fist around it and lean in close to whisper. I win. Before. Babe, can you pass me that soda? There's no reply. Tate? I reluctantly sit up, squinting through the dark glass of my shades. The gentle curve of the beach stretches in front of me, sparkling white sand leading down to the crystal blue waters lapping gently against the shore. The sun is hot in a cloudless sky, warming my bare skin. It's perfection. I look over at Tate. He's sitting up with his bare back to me, bent over his cell phone, so I toss my magazine at him. He looks around. What? Oh, sorry. He passes a soda can from the cooler, glancing again at his phone. Are they having fun? I ask. Oh, yeah. They're out on the boat, he adds. AK's taking tons of photos, you know he won't shut up about that new camera of his. I laugh. Let me guess, we're going to get 57 million shots of some fish underwater? Pretty much. Tate grins. I lie back, letting the sun melt through my bones, taking with it all my tension and stress. Right now, Boston feels like 1,000 miles away, college application drama and all my dad's business worries like something from another life. I let my mind go blank, soothed by the sounds of the waves, and the occasional burst of chatting and laughter from the other beachgoers set up around us on the sand. Time slips past. Tate's phone sounds with another text, and then a moment later, I hear his voice. Shit, I left my sunglasses back at the house. Here, take mine. I hold them out to him, resting my other elbow over my face to block the sun. No, it's cool. I need to go charge my phone anyway. Tate gets to his feet and grabs his wallet from the blanket. I won't be long. You remember the security code? Yeah, but Elise is still back there, right? She could still be sleeping. I check my phone, but there are no new messages. Check on her for me, okay? I tell him. She's still not replying to my texts. Sure. She's probably just hungover, though. I make a face. She's not the only one. Tate slips his feet into his flip-flops and makes to leave, but I reach up toward him. He pauses, leaning down to quickly kiss my lips. Tell her to get her ass down here. I yawn. She can lie around in bed any day back home. This is vacation she's missing here. Tate smiles, then sets off back across the sand. I find the bottle of lotion, and start to reapply. My skin is pale and always burns easily, but the only alternative is this thick, white goop, sticky and smelling like coconut. I cover myself as best I can, but there's a wide swath across my back I can't reach, so I set the bottle aside and turn back to my magazine, waiting for Tate to return. The minutes pass. I finish the magazine and dig in the beach tote for my lip balm, bored. I'm getting hungry now, so I grab my beach bag and quickly slip into my shorts and sandals, then head up the beach. The back doors of the beach house are open when I reach it, the glass slid aside. I climb up the stairs from the beach, and step inside. Hello? The house is quiet, nobody in sight. Then I hear laughter coming from deeper inside. Elise's voice. And Tate. I can't hear what they're saying, only the tone of their voices. Teasing. Affectionate. I freeze. And suddenly, I remember the necklace, the one Tate had in his pocket, the one Elise claimed as her own. I had put all of that aside. After all, there were a dozen ways for us to have mixed them up. I probably took it by mistake, long before the trip. We sat here on the beach together, just the night before. Elise said it was the two of us. Always. Their laughter comes again, echoing in the expanse of white and tile and bright sunshine. My heartbeat quickens. I feel a faint wave of nausea spread through me. I think of the way she was teasing him the first day, when we arrived. There was something pointed about it, taunting. And Tate, being so protective about Nicholas. I take a long, shaky breath. Part of me wants to turn back around, go lie out in the sun until Tate gets back, and spend the rest of the afternoon playing in the water, but now that the idea is in my head, I know I can't stop, not until I can prove to myself I'm wrong. I take a slow step, deeper into the house, toward their voices. Hey, Hans. Elise's voice exclaims. She giggles flirtatiously. I'm trying to give you a show here. Ah, come on. Tate groans. What do you think? I got it right before we left. I think you look fucking sexy. And what? Elise's voice drops, seductive. What are you going to do about it? There's no more talking. I'm at the end of the hallway now, beside Elise's empty room. They're in our room, I realize. Our bed. Bile rises in my throat, but I force myself to keep walking. It could be a game, I tell myself. Just messing around. Some other explanation. It has to be. I see them a split second before I hear Elise moan, like lightning, flashing sharp ahead of the slow rumble of thunder. They're framed through the open door of the bedroom, tangled up in each other on the bed. Naked. Tate rolls her underneath him, groaning as he thrusts. Elise's legs are wrapped around him, pale against the golden tan of his back as she whimpers and arches up against him. I can't look away. They tumble over again, and this time, Elise is on top. She sinks deeply against him, her eyes closed, her arms drifting above her head. She looks the way she always does when she's dancing, lost in something bigger than herself. Swept up. Blissful. Then her eyes open, and she looks directly at me. I don't move. Our gaze is caught across Tate's oblivious body, and for a moment, it's like I'm there beneath her, her skin against mine. Then her face begins to change. She's caught up, too far gone to stop. I watch the orgasm rush through her. I feel it in my bones. Like an awakening. Like a death. And all the while, our eyes stay locked on each other's. How much do you love me?